So earlier this year, I upgraded to the FX30 from my A7 III and GH5 as my A camera for 2024. Now, a lot of people who are really big fans of full frame or huge fans of the GH5 are probably up in the air about why I did that. I got another video coming for that soon. But today's video is to talk about a lens that is probably my most favorite lens that I've used on the FX30 so far since I used it, and that's saying a lot because I'm a real big fan of that Helios 44-2. But with the focal range that it has, this lens is easily turned into the most versatile lens that I've ever used ever since I picked up a Sony camera. And that's saying something because I've been using Sony cameras all the way since the A6300. But before we get into that, welcome back to the channel. My name is DaVinci HD, where we talk about gear tips and everything that comes with filmmaking and cinema. If you like this video and want to see more from me, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. It really helps me put out more content for you guys like this. And for those of you looking to connect with me a little bit better, I did start a new Discord server called Cine Bros Network, or CBN for short. This is pretty much a Discord server designed for filmmakers, content creators, cinematographers, basically anyone in the content creator space that wants to chat and connect with other creators in their field, share and learn new ideas, or just being able to chat in a safe space with like-minded people. There are some rules applies to the server, but if you guys want to jump in on that, link will be in the description. So the lens that I'm going to talk about today is a lens that not too many people look at when it comes to Sony lenses. It is pretty prominent in the APS-C realm, but given the rise of cameras like the FX30, this lens is pretty much a Swiss Army knife. So the lens we're talking about today is the Sony 18-105mm f4 aperture. So this is a lens that's pretty much getting up there in age. It originally came out back in like 2013, and at that time, if my research is correct, I think only the A7 and A7R were released during that year. Nevertheless, this lens seems to keep making its way onto people's bills, whether I see people using it with the FX6, FS7, or even the FX30 and other APS-C Sony cameras other than full frame. And so with some of the key features, of course, it's an 18-105 focal range. Now, given the fact that this is an APS-C lens, you're going to have to take into account the crop factor whenever you stick it onto pretty much any Sony camera you stick this lens on. You're going to have to account for the 1.5 times crop with this lens, which would give it a focal length equivalent of about 27 to 157. And with that type of focal range, it's giving me the ability to use this lens on a very wide variety of projects. Like pretty much anything you can think of, I've shot with this lens. I've shot a wedding with this lens. I've done basketball and football with this lens. And of course, I've shot a crap ton of music videos with this lens, especially in the daytime. Which brings me into my next point about this lens, which is the fact that it is a constant f4 aperture, which is a good thing and a bad thing for two very distinct different reasons. So it's good the fact that it's a constant aperture and stays at f4. So if you're someone who's worrying about zooming in and the aperture changing as you zoom in, you won't ever have to worry about that. But it's bad in the fact that it is a f4, so there are a lot of low light situations that you are going to be able to use this lens in. But honestly, as long as you're not in a super dark situation, when you're on the FX30, you can kind of push the ISO a little bit to where you can get away with some things in low light with this lens. Like, I'm just going to be all the way honest with you, and I'm not scared to admit it. It does not frighten me to push my FX30 up to about 6400 ISO and still get a usable image out of it. Especially with sometimes, because the look that I'm going for, that grain might actually help me with the style of shooting that I've been kind of converting to lately in 2024. A couple other quick points about the lens. It is a G lens, not a G master lens, but it is a G lens, so you're getting good build quality and good optics. The autofocus is pretty much silent, so you don't have to worry about any type of sounds getting into your mic or your audio when it comes to using your autofocus. It's got a metal lens barrel, it's power zoom, and it's E-mount, so you can use it on APS-C and full frame Sony cameras. And see, the thing about this lens and what I kind of love about it, it's not the most expensive lens that's out there, and it's also not the cheapest lens out there. So you're definitely going to get a lens that's going to give you much better quality than the kit lens you would ever use with your Sony cameras, but it's not going to be the same G master quality that you're looking for out of certain Sony lenses. With that being said, if you're a certain type of shooter like me who doesn't necessarily look for the most sharpest lens, and you're someone who's looking for more of a soft image, this lens would pretty much be perfect, especially with the FX30. Not only does the autofocus work phenomenally, but the lens isn't heavy as well, so you'll be able to make some pretty lightweight rigs out of this lens if you pair it with the FX30. Now, I've been hyping on this lens, but there are a couple things that you do need to watch out for, and we're going to get into a couple of those real quick. So like I said before, this lens is a constant f4 aperture, so if you're someone who's looking for extreme low light capabilities, this lens might not be for you. However, I would still purchase it to get it in your bag, because honestly, this is a lens that stayed in my bag almost 70% of the time that I went out. Almost, actually 90% of the time. This lens never leaves my bag. Another thing you're going to want to watch out for is that this lens doesn't have an aperture ring. If you're someone who likes doing your own aperture, which is something you particularly find in cine lenses anyway, but if that's something that you're typically used to, this may not be the lens for you. Another thing you're going to want to watch out for is that some users of this lens have experienced something called zone creep, which is basically where the lens will extend or retract if you have it facing directly up or down. Note, I haven't personally experienced this yet, but I haven't necessarily looked or tested for it either, so be on the lookout for that. I'd say that's probably on a case-by-case basis. So the last thing I want to touch on, which is pretty much a con with this lens and you'll want to look out for, is if you're looking to purchase this lens for your full frame camera, which that isn't going to matter much if you're doing video, but if you're someone who does photos, this is definitely a problem for your full frame cameras, because anytime you slap an APS-C lens on your full frame cameras in the photo mode, it takes literally all of your megapixels away, and then you lose all of your quality in your photos. For example, when I had this lens on my A7 III for video, it was perfectly fine, I had no issues, but when I went into photo mode, it dropped my megapixels all the way to like 8 or 10 megapixels, which is just virtually unusable. That's like a cell phone. But beyond that, I'm telling you, this is probably the best lens for any APS-C Sony camera that you have out there on the market right now. This is probably the best bang for buck, best versatile, best all-around lens that you could use for any Sony APS-C camera when it comes to video specifically. And if you're on a budget and need a zoom lens for your full frame camera for video, you can get away with it. If any of you guys have used this lens, put your experience with it in the comments. Let me know what you thought as well. Before we get out of here, this video is sponsored by Enhancer Pro. Enhancer Pro is a film emulation plugin for Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and Lightroom. It comes with over 60 different film stocks, as well as film print emulations and other things like gate weave, film breadth, halation, as well as film grain. If you want 10% off on this plugin, use my promo code DaVinci24. Link to the plugin will be in description, as well as my review of this plugin. With that being said, I appreciate all you guys that made it this far. If you like this video and got any value out of it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's been another one from your boy DaVinci HD, reminding you that the only reason that piece of art that you want isn't out is because you haven't pressed record. See you on set. Peace out.